page 13. And then I have a shortened version right behind that with the trailing returns and blended benchmark that was also requested. So if you open up to page 13, you'll see on the far right-hand side, since the start date of May 2011, the average return of the pension plan has been 7.05, just shy of what the assumed interest rate is over that period of time. The stock market was up 7.8%, during that time period. The bond market was up 1.9. So we're heavily rewarded for leaning towards stocks versus bonds since inception. So far this year, the same thing has happened, at least in the first quarter so far. If you look all the way to the left-hand side, the selected period is the first quarter of the year. The performance of the pension plan is up about 5.57. The bond market is up about 2.96%, and the stock market's up roughly 7.33 when you look at the entire total stock market. So you were rewarded in the first quarter for leaning towards equities and staying the course. Almost the same exact thing happened in the fourth quarter. So again, to have the best probability of hitting the assumed interest rate, given what we're using now with the plan, is leaning more towards equities over bonds and cash. And we don't try to time the market. Now that bonds have run up, the yields have gone up pretty high. We believe if there is a second bear market rally where the market comes down, we will have a big buying opportunity. So one of the best things about the efficiency of the program, we're always buying whatever asset class goes down. Give you an example of that. Last year in 2022, the losing asset class was large cap growth. Anybody want to guess what's winning so far this year? Large cap growth. So we're able to buy that pretty cheap towards year end when we rebalanced, and we've been doing that for over a decade with you guys. So far in the quarter, we are slightly behind the blended benchmark, mainly for two reasons. First is international has done better than U.S. for the first time in a long time. We've seen when things are uncertain, the international marketplace is actually doing better. Main reason for that was better than expected weather and the fall of the dollar. We do expect and will continue to lean more towards U.S. stocks versus international, mainly because when you take a look at consumers, our consumer spending is much more durable here in the U.S. if you look at the numbers through the first quarter and the fourth quarter. So we expect people that are buying things at stores to hold up much better here in the U.S. than overseas. So we're going to continue to have that bias towards U.S. equities. The other thing that happened is we saw somewhat of a banking crisis where we saw Silicon Valley Bank struggle, have some problems. That caused the long-term interest rates to drop. We have what's called a shorter duration on the bond portfolio. So last year, as interest rates were rising, we did better than the overall bond market because we had a shorter interest rate duration. So far this year, that hasn't worked out. What we do believe it will work out through the remainder of 2023. So right now, if you look at the shortened version of the performance report on page 3 of 5, you'll see the performance over the so far year to date is 5.57. The 3-year average is 11.83. The selected period, so for the first quarter, the portfolio was up 5.57. The blended benchmark was roughly 5.96. Your 3-year return has been 11.83. The benchmark is 11.09. The 5-year return was roughly at 5.98%. The blended benchmark at 5.45. And then your 10-year return was roughly 7%. Darn close to exactly what we showed you we were expecting to get from that 70-30 mix. And your benchmark performance was roughly 6.5. So you have had better than benchmark performance since the start, and it gave us the ability to come close to that assumed interest rate. Any questions?
The benchmark, what was that blended benchmark for last year? Do you know?
Yeah, last year, the blended benchmark was at 16.46 negative, and the performance here was roughly 16.05.
I have another question. Going back to the full report on page 13, in the net contribution,
Yep.
I noticed that both for the selected period and the last year, it's negative. Is that because we have more people drawing benefits than the contributions, or is it a function of not hitting the expected rate of return? or
No,
both?
the performance is the change in value, so it's
Right.
the first one. So you
Okay.
have more money going out than coming in. So the net contribution, and the performance is net contribution. We net out.
Right.
But, so you, for the year, last year, you had negative $2 million going out the door.
Okay. So we're now at the point where there's more retirees than there are actives, basically.
Yeah, and the state aid. So the contribution from the police officers is much lower than the overall cost of the benefits. So the state aid coming in and the officers' contribution were lower than what went out.
Okay, so that does that include the contributions that are made by the township as part of the MMO? Or it's
Yeah,
the
well,
so it's
the
the gap?
MM the minimum obligation is that contribution, and then
Right.
the state aid is just a. part
Offset some of
yeah.
the MMO
That's
that the
correct.
state would, that the township would otherwise pay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, we greatly appreciate the opportunity. If there is going to be a bear market rally, this time different than last year with where interest rates are, we would look at that as a buying opportunity. So we're telling our clients that you may need the fortitude and conviction to stay the course. And we've benefited from that, throughout the years, other than last year. We still benefited, but just not to the point that we did previously. But thank you.
I'm sorry, and what's the current assumed rate of return?
7.25. 7.25.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Larkin. In fact, actuarial report, actually. David Reed.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, I have a brief actuarial report to present, and before I do that, I figured we would just kind of get up to date with the calendar of events. It is an odd calendar year, so we are prepared to do the evaluation that sets forth contributions for 2024 and 25, but we know that there is some retroactive compensation coming that really should be factored in, and I think that's part of the CBA process. I believe that the timing of that might be June. I thought there was retroactive pay increases going back to 2021 that needed to be captured.
Rob?
Yes, we did. So that needs to be communicated to us.
What do you need, Dave?
And then we need to know the retro pay, and hopefully it's by pay period for,
So let's just send you a copy of the CPA?
so if you know what part is from 2021, what part is from 2022. Yeah, and
Okay.
so that'll be important for people that retired during that time frame. Maybe they retired at the end of 2021. We need to know if we need to recalculate those pensions.
Okay.
Because it's a 24-month rolling period that you need to test for the high average.
Okay.
So once we get that pay information, we'll be prepared to do that.
So you need to know it by, just so everyone's on the same page. So you need to know what the retro was by person by
Correct.
pay, not just the total numbers.
Correct, by individual.
Okay.
Should we get the township to provide that for you?
Yep, that's typically.
Beverly
who
Wilson?
would provide that.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
And then I believe everyone has their benefit statements, their annual statements, with the exception of one person, or they're coming if they haven't been,
I just found out they're in the building.
okay.
We'll get with the secretary and work on.
So those are in
distributing
your
those.
hands, you'll get them shortly. There's one person that we withheld who is
Military
considering
person?
purchasing military service and
Yes.
then, needs to know how to.
He's
how to-
indicated that he wants to purchase it.
Okay, well, it's really not a purchase, it's to get credit for it, he has to
Make
make
the
the
payments.
officer contributions for that
Correct.
time period.
He wants to do that.
Once he's done, we'll update his statement as, based on whatever he decides to do.
So Dave, will the other statements have to be updated now because of the retro pay?
We can do that. Yeah, because basically we would say for those hired pre-2021, we would look at the high 24-month average. We would just look at the last 24 months. So if it's going to change, then we would either reissue those or just true it up at the 1/1/24. And we do those annually.
Okay.
It's an estimate only. It just kind of gives people a picture of a point in time at where they stand and what they could expect if they continue at the same amount of earnings until superannuation. So these are not any kind of governing document. We could update them if you'd like us to, once we get that pay. So we'll do that. Once we get the 2023 valuation done, the next will be an MMO season where we'll be communicating budget information to the township in terms of contributions. But what you have now is what the township uses in its financial statements. So it's really not a report that this board needs to do anything to act upon, but it does give you a sense of where we stand at 1/1/23 on a market basis. So if you turn to page 3, it gives you a summary that as of the end of 2022, how many participants are in the plan and what categories they fall in. So you've got 154 people drawing a pension, whether it's retirement or disability or a survivor pension. You've got one person who is no longer employed, but is not quite at their age where they can receive their benefit yet, and you got 124 active officers in the plan. The liabilities, at the end of 2022, the active participants generate about 47.4 million of liability. The inactive, which is the 154 plus the one, is 80.8 million. The plan's liabilities are 128.2 million. The service cost of just under $4 million, that is the value of benefits that will be accrued or that were accrued in 2022. So all the active officers working, earning a pension, that's that piece of the pension pie for 2022. And the covered payroll is just a hair under 15 million. Page 4, this is,
Can I stop
Yeah.
for a question? The average expected remaining service lives?
Yep.
As of 12/31/2022?
yep. So that is a number that's used for amortization payments.
Okay.
And in GASB's rules, so for example, Jeff and Tom have some level of number of years of service left till they're expected to retire. Let's just say it's 20. And every active has the same concept going on. They're all different ages right now. But however, every inactive counts as 0. So that's why it's such a low number.
Okay.
Where it's used, if you turn to page 4, in the bottom, it says amortization payments. That concept of average future service is used when we get to there, and I'll show you that in the next page. So this is an accounting item only. This is what the township accrues in its financial statements. Think of it like a P&L statement. This is their P&L hit for the year over year, 2021 versus 2022. It was just under $500,000 in 21. For 2022, the pension expense is 6.35 million. You can see the service cost on the top is relatively, it grows a little bit. It grows with salary increases. The interest cost is purely interest on the plan's liability. It is exactly what it sounds like. The offsetting item is that you expect your assets to have some performance. So that expected return is an offsetting item. The plan has expenses, and the officers make contributions. You can see these numbers don't change all that much, although expenses went down quite a bit. And the amortization payments is the biggest change. So rather than just show you the whole number, we'll go to the next page and I'll show you how we get there. So you can see, starting on the top, we've got a big asset loss for 2022. You're expecting 7.25, and if you return a negative 16, that means you lost minus 23.25% of your assets. So you amortize that over a flat 5 years, and this is not a contribution exercise we're talking about today. This is purely accounting. They are apples and oranges. In 2021, the asset experience was a $5 million gain, and you can see the history of gains and losses on the asset side. You have, in 2021, we made an assumption change. In the odd years, you will see liability experience because that's when we're updating census data and doing a fresh valuation versus a roll forward. So we'll capture that activity. So when you see like the 4.2 next to the assumption change and the liability experience, that is that concept of average future service. So those items, anything other than asset experience, you amortize it over the expected future working years of your population, with those who aren't working counting as zero in your denominator. You didn't think you were going to get accounting lessons today, did you?
I love it.
On page 6, this really is how the plan is looked at on a balance sheet perspective. On this page right here, you've got liability. So GASB gives you some nice terminology. Total pension liability, we talked about, it's 128.2 million at the end of 22. It was 123.2 at the beginning of 2022. And you can see how it changes. You earn benefits, that's a growth in liabilities. There's interest, that's a growth. But the plan makes benefit payments to its pension recipients. That every time a pension payment is made, the liability for that person gets a little bit less. So that's how you reconcile from beginning to end. The same thing, real fancy terminology for assets is fiduciary net position. You can see you went from 113.7 million to 93.8, and that's the cash flow. Contributions in, expenses out, and then investment return is the balancing item. At the end of the day, your net is the difference between the two. You were $9.5 million underfunded at 12/31/21, and we're 34.4 million underfunded at 12/31/22. And the song remains the same for every one of your contemporaries. Basically 2022, there was nowhere to hide as a sponsor of the DB plan for the most part.
So that's so that's the percentages on page 8. We went from basically 92% funded to 73% funded. Am I reading that correctly?
Which page?
On page 8,
Yes,
on the percent, right? I
Yep.
mean, so
right.
that going from 9.5 to 34 million,
Mhm.
it's a swing of, nearly 20%.
Right.
An unfunded liability.
And remember, this report where you will report assets at market value.
Right.
In the funding report, because these are generational pension plans, they're designed to go 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. They're kind of perpetual. You're funding for the long term. So, and when you're really measuring every other year, you could really have some significant peaks and valleys, and you don't really want to fund that way. You want to fund level. So we do some asset smoothing that is completely provided for in the statutes, and it's a concept that really makes sense in a pension plan. So when we do the 1/1/23 report to present that, we'll really be talking about a different asset figure because you'll be deferring some of those losses just the way you deferred some gains in the past. So I'll be prepared to talk about that when we
Right,
get
so
there.
basically the GASB number and the MMO number are different
Yeah.
because they report the assets and the
Play
liabilities
nice together,
differently.
right.
Because GASB came along long after the MMO calculations.
Page 7, those amortization items that I talked to you about also have a fancy name under GASB. They're called deferred inflows and outflows. So a gain is an inflow and a cost item is an outflow.
It's almost
This is
like
just a
lawyers
summary.
wrote these names.
You would think. This is a summary of kind of how they play out. You can see which ones are outflows, which ones are inflows, and then it gives you a projection of what those amortization payments are over the next 5 years. This is stuff the auditors all use. GASB also requires you to record a history of this stuff along the way, a 10-year history. And this all started back in 2014, so you didn't have to build it retroactively. You had to kind of keep track of it going forward. So we're not quite at 10 years yet. We're getting close. So all that history is here if you needed to see it. This will also be published in the township's financial statements. And then on page 10, it gives you a history of actuarially determined contributions. So basically the MMO contributions compared to what you actually put in. And you'll see here, it's almost always the exact same amount, which is nice about Act 205 and the funding rules is that there are indeed funding rules. You get some public sector pension plans in other states that these numbers are all over the place. They don't put in what they're supposed to. You can think of all the, pull up any news article from places like Illinois and New Jersey, and you'll see all you want to see.
Yep. Funding
And-
holidays. There's no funding holidays here.
Page 12 is a very, very simple summary of the assets and the different asset classes. And in the rest of the report, starting on 13, is just a summary of assumptions that we make, the way we do what we do, and then behind that is a summary of the plan provision. So you basically need to tell you what we're valuing. And that's really it. Again, this is a report that's exclusively used by the auditors and the township's, finance folks, but we thought it was valuable information to share with you today. Any questions for me?
How much underfunded are we?
34
Want me
million.
to repeat it, Jeff?
Well, you said two different numbers, that's why I was confused.
You were 9.5 million underfunded at the end of 21, and you're 34.4 million underfunded at the end
I
of
see.
22,
Okay,
Based on the GASB valuation.
based on market value of assets.
okay.
And this is a roll forward of liability. So once we run 1/1/23 under updated census data, we'll get that, that compensation information we're looking for. We'll have all fresh values.
Okay. When I asked him that question about people that go out of 20.
I don't think we need to do that on record.
No, okay. That's it.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Authorization for the following, payment to CBIZ INR for 2022 GASB valuation benefit calculations and review of the drop program for the amount of $4,208.20.
Actually, I have just a question about that.
This right here.
Yeah, about the GASB valuation piece. Is the GASB valuation, is that properly a charge to the fund or is it a charge to the township? I mean, clearly the amount, that's just a real question.
Yeah, most of
Good question.
our clients pay it from the fund's assets.
Okay,
Yeah, I guess the township could do it however it wanted to do it.
Okay.
If you want to do it that way, but it is a requirement
for the plan.
for the plan.
Okay,
So those financials are the plan's financials.
Okay.
okay.
No question there.
Yep.
Payment to Cozen O'Connor, Attorney Robert Kaplan for professional services, attorney fees for the first quarter, January 1 through March 31st, in the amount of $11,314. And I have an itemized bill if you and John want to see that. Payment to Kara M. Gavin for secretarial services for the second quarter of 2023 for $350. Do I need a motion?
Need a motion? Yeah,
Uh,
so moved.
All in favor? Need a second?
Aye.
Second? Aye. Aye. Ayes
Aye.
have it.
Aye.
Thank you, John. Acknowledgements, the passing of retired Captain Harry Davis on March the 9th. The drop retirement, this will be our third addition to the drop program. Drop retirement for Officer Samuel Zavillo, effective date of April 27th, 2023. And while we're on that topic, I was reminded, they are interested in having something prepared, the participants of the drop that indicate that, and yeah, an acknowledgement of it and where they're at and what their status is.
How would they receive their payments or their statements, Dave?
hadn't really talked about statements yet.
Should probably microphone, guys,
Sorry,
for the recording purposes.
So I don't think we nailed down yet how we're going to address giving a
Okay.
statement. You know, as you know, there's no interest, so it's just an accumulation of monthly payments. And I think for
So it's
some
just
these
number of months
officers, they might not
times-
even know what their payment amount is yet.
Right.
We have to get compensation information
Okay.
up through when they terminate,
Right.
when their drop entry date is. So for some of them, they haven't gotten there yet. So even though they let you know a month ago, they're in drop but don't know their payment amount yet because we need final pay.
Okay,
We can communicate what the amount is, and you tell us what you want to do, how frequently you want to show them something, but it's basically A times B, which is A, the monthly payment, and B, the number of months.
okay.
There's nothing fancy involved.
Would you recommend yearly?
Yeah, there's two things you could do. I mean, you could send them in sorry, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
There's two things you could do. Number one, if you wanted, after every meeting where someone gets approved for the drop program, you could send them an acknowledgement letter saying the trustees have approved you. Congratulations.
Okay,
And second, you could send them, once Dave does his calculations, you could send them something that says, assuming you make it to your drop retirement date, your monthly benefit will be X and your lump sum payment will be Y. You could do one on the tail end rather than an acknowledgement.
okay.
To me, it's however you want to do it.
Right, because the monthly payment can't change. It's just the number of months if something happens and they don't make it to
And they
their
don't make
drop
it, then
date
their
for
lump
some
sum
reason.
changes.
Yeah,
So to me, that's more valuable than just the congratulations letter.
Okay,
But you could send out like a form letter saying we've accepted your application and we hereby, and we're calculating your benefit.
okay.
right, and you can't calculate, so even though, for example, his drop date is effective April 27th, you can't even start your calculations until after
April
that's
27th.
passed because you need the final pay.
We need April 27th to come and go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just
So
like any other.
then the other two guys that are already in it should be able to tell on their last check.
Well, they won't see anything in a check. They're not going to see, no money is actually
Right.
exchanging hands yet.
Okay, all right.
It's staying in
until
the
they
trust.
retire.
It's being tracked
Right.
off to the side as if that
Right.
payment was made.
Yeah, the only change that they'll see in their check is they'll no longer be making pension
Payments.
contributions.
yes.
So they get the bump
Yeah, a
from,
lot of this got agreed on and nobody knew what they were agreeing
Yeah,
to.
From the plan's perspective,
Unfortunately,
they're
I'm
a
being honest.
retiree.
They're just treated as retired.
It's just
Right.
for
Right.
every other respect, they're an
Right.
active
And
employee.
Dave does a full calculation as if they're retired.
right. So do they then get, so you do, obviously you do annual benefit statements for the active employees. Retirees don't normally get
No.
any statements,
They get 1099s and.
Right.
you know.
but these are,
deposits
but
to their
drop
bank
is sort
account.
of that in-between.
Yeah, and drop is new, so you have to kind of
Right.
manage expectations or set the expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it works yet.
That's why I'm wondering if we should send something to people so that they understand what's happening
Yeah, and the question is, do you want to send it right away or do you want to wait?
until you have the number. I would
Other-
think it'd be better if it then have the number, which is
That's
to
what I
say,
I think you definitely have to communicate the number, because there's gonna be,
Right.
there's survivor benefits communicated in
Right.
there. You know, if something happens to them while they're in drop, they're, from the plan's perspective,
They're already retired.
The
Right.
drop period ends, everything gets paid out, and
Now-
the spouse starts monthly payments.
Theoretically, it's communicated because we worked up that form pretty good to explain exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw the drop form.
do you think that the people understand what happens?
I don't know about that.
That's what, I mean, I just, in my experience, people don't really understand
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. no,
It was never explained. It was like, okay, this is what you guys got, now you're in drop. And it's like, well, hold on. People that
I mean,
agreed on it never
you
even
had-
explained it.
You had two drop applications like within a week of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
They were waiting.
And really, the immediate priority is to make sure payroll knows to stop the contributions on their
Right.
drop.
Right.
entry.
I've been notifying them.
That's the first thing that has to get done.
Okay.
The monthly amount, while they would want to know, it's certainly interesting, is
there's nothing they can do about it,
Nothing
so,
they can do about it.
right.
Okay.
they can reference their latest statement and have a general idea of what they could expect.
I think maybe it would make the most sense is once Dave does the calculations, to just send them a letter that says, you know, great, you're in, you know, as you know, you've been approved for a drop or you've been approved for a drop and, you know, here's what your monthly amount is and the amount of your lump sum will be, you know, the monthly amount times the number of months that you stay in drop to a maximum of, what is it? Is it 5 years? Oh, it's not
24, 2 years.
Okay. So, you know, to a maximum of 24 months.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll, do you want to see a template or should I just send these three out and then I'll show you what a copy looks like next quarter?
What do you,
I think a template wouldn't be a bad idea, because
Yeah.
that way you guys can get a sense of whether you think it'll
Before I
be
send out
helpful to
these.
people and, or if it's too lawyery,
Yeah.
right? We want it to not be lawyery,
No, I'm with you.
so.
Yeah.
Which I get to say,
lay-
as somebody who writes letters that are
layman
lawyery.
terms it,
And,
yes.
yeah, and then if you want, you can send them with benefit statements or I can send them. It doesn't matter to me. We can decide
Yeah,
next
we
quarter.
can
who to send
process
them.
those with the
Yeah.
annual benefit statements, and if
Okay.
someone decides that it's not frequent enough, we can talk again.
Okay. I think most people will be satisfied once they are acknowledged that they're in the plan, he said,
Right.
in the plan.
And see the number.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yes.
could send an acknowledgement letter just to let them know, but to me, the number is what they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the
that's
letter
that.
need to say, or does the drop election form say, like, what happens if, in the event of, like, you killed in service while you're in drop, or you become disabled while you're in
I have
drop?
to
Like,
go check. I think it does, but I have to go
Yeah.
double check. It may not talk about each individual thing. I think it says if you terminate,
Right.
here's what happens.
It's our understanding if you become disabled, you're automatically retired.
You're already retired.
Does the form
You're,
say
yeah,
that?
because you already are.
We'll make sure it does.
I'll make sure it does.
Okay. So for the drop, are we up to date and squared away with that for now?
I think so.
Okay.
So,
I mean, the one issue, which is not necessarily drop related, is the CBA, the arbitration award for this collective bargaining agreement
Mm-hmm.
had a provision that the parties would work together to do a new CBA within 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
That 90 days has come and gone, and I don't think they've gotten very far on a new CBA.
You don't have to tell me twice.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been trying to hold off on the pension plan document
Right.
so that we get
It would
a
match.
single CBA, yes. Yeah, because we've been sort of cobbling together all of the arbitration awards and agreements throughout the years.
Should I reach out to the attorney from the FOP that handles this?
Be helpful, yeah.
Okay.
And I put it on John McLaughlin's radar also.
Oh, good luck.
I was going to say, given how well they got along in trying to get the interest arbitration award done, I'm confident that they are really on the verge of getting that done. Or not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll reach out to Joe Shupin.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Should I move on to the next item? Did you need this? No, okay.
Nope, that's what I had for,
All right,
for
thank-
old business.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else under old business?
No, because I think everything else is executive session.
Okay, so I see we have visitors from Lodge 27, one of the solicitors, Skip Miller, and the president, Fitzgerald. Do you guys, either you want to speak while we're online, or do you prefer to speak offline after we go into executive?
Yeah, so traditionally, we've done disability reviews under executive session because of the personal nature of the disability. There is a provision in the Sunshine Act that if either the claimant or their counsel wishes to do it in public session, that they have that right to do it in public session. So I think the question is whether you guys would like to continue on public session or go to executive session for the disability claims.
Makes no difference to me as long as the record is made.
Do you have a preference, President?
Well, no, I want a record made also, so
Okay,
Okay, you want to stay
So-
public?
stay public.
That's fine.
Okay, so we have application from Kelly Kearns, disabled officer, request for service-connected disability benefits. We spoke about this in executive. Plan attorney advises that we proceed with retiring Officer Kearns. Do you,
Wait, didn't we already, right? She's already been
Yeah. So
given
I-
a disability pension. It's just whether it's service connected?
Correct. So you voted to approve her as disabled, and I think there was some question about whether it was service-connected in your minds. And I think that's the only remaining part on the table.
right. You had advised an opinion on how to proceed with that also, right?
Yeah, so there's nothing in the medical reports to me that says it's not a
Okay.
service-connected disability.
Okay. Do you want to?
And I'm sorry, can you just remind me on that one, because I may be mixing up the two. What is the status, if there is one, of workers' compensation on Kearns, or is that
never-
the one that never went?
She never went.
Okay, that's what
right?
I thought.
That's right. Kearns never went to workers' comp.
The employer never contested the job-related disability.
Thank you for the clarification. That's what I thought I remembered, but I wanted to make sure I was.
Oh, and
I have
did
that.
the township have an opinion and want to weigh in on either of these?
Why don't we do them one at a time?
Okay.
On Officer Kearns?
Kearns?
We support what your attorney is recommending.
Okay,
Which is that she be granted a service-connected disability pension.
okay,
So I think, do we just need a vote at this point? Okay.
okay. Can I have a motion?
Sure. Motion to approve the service, Officer Kelly Kearns for a service-connected disability pension.
Do I have a second? I'll second it.
Do you want to be heard on Kearns?
What do you say?
Well, they just voted to approve. You still want to be heard?
When would you like it effective?
The application was submitted in March last year,
I think it's retroactive to her termination date.
and with all due respect, I received an email from Mr. Kaplan sometime way later advising that you had taken action on that application at your October meeting.
Correct.
We never received any notice. There was never any response to the application. And as you all know, Officer Kearns is 100% vested in this pension plan. And a month from today, she will have completed 17 years of service and 17 years contributing to the plan. So at a minimum, she's entitled to a response or something from the trustees advising what the status of her application is. I got an later email from Mr. Kaplan, with all due respect to Rob, saying that his understanding was that the pension payments had started. I talked to Kelly Kearns this morning. She hasn't received dime one.
Well, you knew before this morning that she hadn't received dime one. It's not like this morning that came to a surprise. You've known that she hasn't
I know,
received them.
but I
Okay,
wanted to verify that nothing had happened since the last time I talked to her, Tom,
right.
okay? And so the problem is.
You want to come up to the microphone for the
For the
problem
record.
is-
record? Oh, okay, yeah, John needs to hear you.
The problem is that we need some clarification. The application was submitted in March of 2022. And our position is, if there was never any question regarding the permanency of her disability, and apparently there isn't, then she's entitled to the benefits that you have approved here tonight, retroactive to March of 2022, the date she applied. So I don't have any information about what happened. I don't have any information about what happened after you made your decision in October at your October meeting. And then my understanding was that at the January meeting, the issue was again tabled, according to the emails that I got from Mr. Kaplan, with all due respect. So just clarification, we need to know where she is in this process. You having approved it for non-service, okay. Am I to understand that somehow it will be set in motion that she will receive a pension check out of the fund that brings her up to date, retroactive to March of 2022?
I would,
That's simply,
So I don't know when she left.
Make sure, so John can.
go ahead, John.
My 2 cents is I don't know when she terminated and left the township payroll, but to me, that should be the start date of this retroactive benefit.
Because prior to that, she was on,
She was an
she was on,
employee.
right, she was receiving Heart and Lung,
Right.
right? When did do we know when Heart and Lung stopped?
yes.
I
I believe that it stopped on November 4, 2022.
Right, so prior to that, she was receiving full pay. Obviously, she's not going to get a pension benefit retro past the
Right.
date when
To
she
me,
was
that's
being
a
fully
start date.
paid.
That's why I'm asking the
Right,
question.
so I think it would be as of when she terminated.
Correct. I agree with that.
Right, but I think we have to wait, so we have a motion, but I think we didn't actually vote
Right.
formally to do it, but then I guess we would be part of the same motion back at sewer date. So I think the motion would be, we'd move to approve the service-connected disability for Officer Kelly Kearns, effective as of her separation date
Correct.
from the township.
Well,
Does that make
okay,
sense?
right. My next, and thank you for that.
But we still actually, if it's still about Officer Kearns, we need to vote,
Okay.
so.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that retroactive date,
Okay,
Right,
because Rob and I agree, that's,
okay.
okay, so then I think we
That's
actually just need
correct.
to vote to approve
Okay.
it.
So,
So
we
you
have
need
the
to second, and then we just need to vote.
Okay. We have the second?
Yeah, you seconded the
Okay.
first time. Do you want to second
All right.
again?
No. All in favor of the disability for Officer Kearns, service-connected disability for Officer Kearns, retroactive to the date of separation from township employee? All in favor?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. Tom?
Opposed?
3 ayes, 1 opposed. Ayes have it. Motion passes.
now, if I may, by way of point of inquiry, the application was supported by medical reports confirming Officer Kearns' on-duty injury in March of 2016. And to my knowledge, there never was a report contrasting those reports, because they were all IME reports that were requested by the township, which Officer Kearns did undergo. So my question is, and I think as a matter of fairness to her, because we have this procedure now, as you know, and we're going to move immediately to arbitration. But we have that procedure, but I need to know exactly what documents the trustees relied upon for their decision. Because if you're thinking that there was some type of medical treatment, there's no emergency room treatment for the January incident. There's no medical documentation for any medical visit, and there's no diagnostic studies. So absent any medical documentation that supports a previous injury, it is curious how you could arrive, or anyone could arrive at a decision that her injury, which was before you in the application, is non-job related. So all I'm asking is if, and you may not have it in front of you now, provide it to Mr. Kaplan, and he can then forward it to me, so we can see, as a matter of fairness, what it is you're relying on.
Well, the trustees didn't vote to find that it was non-service connected disability. It was tabled and seeking more information from council. So I think there was never a vote saying it wasn't. It was granted as disabled based on the medical information. And then I believe my recollection is the trustees asked for more information to make sure, because, there are significant consequences for the plan if something is service connected, and we wanted to make sure that we had all the information. Is that what you guys recall?
Yes.
Well, if there's more information that you require, can you tell me what it is?
We've now voted, so.
I understand. But
Yeah.
understand, we're going forward. We have a procedure, we have a interest arbitration award that preceded everything that's happened because it became effective January 1, 2021. So now things have happened and have occurred that are not in line with the collective bargaining interest arbitration award.
I've never seen the interest arbitration award, so I'm not sure what you're talking about.
You talking about this new CBA?
Yeah,
Um,
and that has requirements in it for the township to do certain things.
I don't know what provision you're talking about, or if that applies to the pension trustees.
Yeah, that's on the township, right?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
Okay, well, I'm not here to argue. I simply was making a request of what it is the trustees relied upon for a determination that it's non-service as opposed to service-related.
We didn't make a determination. We never made a determination it was non-service connected. We just voted to find it service connected. We just had tabled the issue
This
previously.
is service-connected?
That's what we just approved.
I beg your pardon, okay, I misunderstood what you were saying, okay? My fault, okay, I'm getting too old for this. So she has approved for a service-connected. All right, thank you.
Retroactive to her seven.
Okay,
Correct.
to the date that Rob and I
Yes.
agreed.
Whatever her separation date
Whenever
was.
she's separated.
Yep.
My apologies.
Yep. And then we need to do the other one, right?
Yes.
This is the one we just got. Mr. Gibbons is the one we just got, the
Yes.
medical information.
Yeah, so Givens came in, I think, fourth quarter. My read of Givens is that he submitted 2 reports from Dr. Bonner and Collier, who are his medical personnel, and they supported a disability determination.
And I'm sorry, can you remind me, previously, I know this came up at the last, but we didn't have any of the medicals. Has there even been did we make a determination as to disability?
No.
Or were we waiting?
You had
And this is
waited.
the one, there was just a workers' compensation decision and there was a heart and lung finding no
Correct.
longer temporary, right?
Correct, although he's still on workers' comp, but he's no longer
Okay.
temporary on heart and lung. So Givens, there's a medical opinion from his doctors that he's disabled.
Right.
A township doctor weighed in and said he's no longer disabled.
And that was what was just in that workers' comp decision
Correct.
back from November, I think?
Yes,
Okay.
saying that he was still on workers' comp.
Okay,
My 2 cents on Gibbons is you don't have discretion here. The terms of the plan say, if you get an application for disability, you either, and it's supported by a medical opinion, you either approve the disability or send them to a township doctor. Once they go to a township doctor, if the township doctor determines that they're disabled, that's the end of the decision on disability. If the township doctor says they're not disabled, the township and the officer work together to find a third doctor to perform a last and final analysis.
and that has not yet
Here,
happened?
that's not happened yet.
Okay,
So just to clarify, though, this was a workers' compensation case that went to court, and the judge did not side with the township's doctor. And so that's why, I mean, there's already 2 opinions,
Right, so the,
and the court has found that our doctor's opinion is not the one they're going
Yeah.
with.
so the
well, isn't
plan,
that still, wasn't that an interim, right? Wasn't that because you had moved to terminate benefits? I thought that was right, that the township had moved to terminate the benefits and the workers' comp judge found that, right, well, found, I think that he just denied the termination of benefits, but I don't think there was a determination of, am I
Agreed.
remembering this
I
correctly?
think
There
that's
was no
right.
determination of permanent disability.
right, just the benefits were not terminated. But to me, so the plan says you use a workers' compensation decision to determine, as a indicator of whether the disability is service-connected or not. The plan does not take into account, the language of the plan doesn't take into account a workers' comp decision for if someone's disabled or not.
In terms of whether it's permanent.
Whether there is a disability, yes,
Okay.
right. So the plan just says if there's a disagreement between the township and the officer's doctor, they go to a third doctor, and that is the final word on whether there's a disability.
So your
Subject to-
recommendation is that under the terms of the plan, we have to say, look, we've got competing medical opinions. We can't make a judgment. Therefore, it has to go to the tiebreaker third doctor.
Correct. That's my recommendation.
And not even on the question of service connected, even just on the question of whether there's
Whether there's a
actually, he's
disability.
permanently disabled
Correct.
within the meaning of the plan. Yeah.
The judge has already, so the judge accepted the opinion of the claimant's treating physician and rejected ours. So we're all really clear on that one.
For purposes of denying the termination petition
Yes.
in November of '22.
Yeah.
Right. But you're saying under the plan document, we have to, if there's two medical opinions,
That's right.
basically under the terms of the pension plan, there has to be a medical opinion.
Right. That's right.
It's a straight, I don't
I mean,
disagree with you that
so-
it's sort of a strange.
So
that
the
it's sort of a
wording of the
strange-
plan, and I'm reading verbatim,
Okay.
is it just says, at the direction of the trustees, the member shall submit to an examination by a physician selected by the township. Right? So it's a little bit backwards because you've already got a
Gotten
township
that, right.
decision. And then it says, in the event of a disagreement between the member's physician and the plan administrator's physician as to the existence of a disability, a third physician designated by agreement between the member and the
But wait,
township.
stop there for a second, Rob, because it says if there's a disagreement between the member's physician and the plan administrator, if the township is taking the position as the plan administrator that there's no longer a dispute because of the workers' compensation decision, which is what I hear the CAO saying. Sorry. It was just a lot of words. That the acting CAO is saying, it sounds like there's no longer a dispute, and if the township is essentially accepting it,
Right. It's at the direction of the trustees, so you could choose not to
right,
send him to another doctor.
right, if there's no actual dispute.
Right.
So let me just ask one question of the acting co-CAO. So since this decision with workers, this workers' comp decision, is that being challenged by the township? Was it appealed? Okay, so that's been accepted. So then it sounds like there's no dispute and the township is accepting the decision of the basically accepting their doctor's decision based on the workers' comp and not challenging that workers' comp decision. It doesn't sound like there's a dispute anymore.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So is the township's position that we should approve this?
Yes.
And it sounds like there's not a dispute about service connected. This is really a dispute about permanently disabled or not originally,
That's
right?
That's right. So you haven't hit the service-connected piece.
Right.
But the next piece is you take into account the decision of workers' comp
For that piece.
for figuring out if there's a
Right.
service-connected.
And it sounds like there's no question there about service
But
connected.
Workers' comp clearly thinks it's service-connected.
Right. And I don't know that the township ever challenged that it was service connected.
I'm sorry, I actually don't have specific information on
Okay.
that one.
So in light of that, what's the recommendation of council?
I think you could do it either way. I mean, I still think it's in your purview to say, at the direction of the trustees, the member has to submit to
Another
exam.
medical.
Because it says, at the direction of the trustees, the member must submit to an exam selected by the township. Now, clearly, if the township doesn't want to select someone, then you'll just turn around and approve it.
Oh,
Right. And do you want to hear from Mr. Miller on this as well?
sure.
Do you want to speak on
Absolutely.
Givens?
I litigated, obviously, the underlying case in front of Judge Stokes. And so I agree with everything that has been presented. And I mean, I obviously rely on what Rob tells you, but if the township is not now contesting the issue of service relatedness of Officer Givens' permanent disability, and is asking that the disability pension be approved, our position is then that's important information for this body to consider at this point, as opposed to invoking some expensive and a long way procedure, because I suspect that the expenses for all of this would have to come out of the fund, because township's not going to pay for it. I'm not going to pay for it. So it's going to have to come out of the fund to go through these medical evaluations where the township says we don't need it. Thank you.
Okay, so he's currently still receiving workers' compensation and he's still employed?
His HLA,
I know the HLA was terminated.
yeah, and
But
the
so he's still
operative
employed.
date is October 8th, I'm sorry, Yeah, it was October 18, 2022.
Right, when they found it was no longer temporary.
Right.
Yep.
Now, you got to remember that the HLA was terminated on the basis of a determination of permanency.
Correct.
And that's what
Mhm.
the arbitrator so found. And that was the position the township had at that arbitration.
Right.
That was was it before your time or were you?
Yeah,
Yeah, way
yeah,
bef-
I read the decision.
You understand part of the problem has been,
Yes.
and certainly Jeff and Tom are aware of it, because, we've talked about trying to get some stability or at least get some communication going, because was lacking for years.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Rob, Mr. Kaplan, in lieu of all that information, am I understanding correctly that if we were to vote to send Officer Givens to an IME, the township can decline, and then it doesn't happen?
I'm thinking about it because the reason I took a breath is because the plan sort of looks at it backwards, right? Like the plan says, at the direction of the trustees, members shall submit to a township examination. But here, the township examination already happened, right? So if you think that that was the township exam, then the next step, there isn't a township decline. It just says the township and the officer shall work together to pick a independent doctor.
Right, but if the township and the officer agreed to accept the opinion of the doctor that's already been rendered, that was accepted by the workers' compensation judge, wouldn't it sort of moot it out?
Well, it says the
If they're in
plan,
agreement, I think that's the problem here. It doesn't contemplate
it
that
doesn't
the
contemplate that
township
they're in agreement.
and the
But-
officer are in agreement, and it's
Problem
the
is the-
trustees that are like, wait a second.
The frank problem here is the township's position doesn't match the township doctor's position, right? Which is the doctor's report says that he's not disabled.
Right, to be clear, the township doctor had a position that the township absolutely supported, but a judge rejected it, at which
Right.
point there's a limit to.
Right.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, it isn't, I think the problem is that the plan didn't contemplate that there would have already been a determination by a
Right.
workers' compensation judge
Right,
on
at
this
this point.
issue at this point, and I think that's it. So, my sense is, given that there's already been a determination by the judge, and there's no longer a dispute, that I'm not sure that we're really in a position to say, well, let's have an additional medical examination.
Because it'd be moot.
Because it would be, I mean, if the township and the officer are taking basically the same position, given the determination of the workers' compensation judge, I'm not sure that because basically what that means is the trustees are taking that position, and if there's, I mean, suppose the additional, we get a third medical exam, it says it's not permanent, right?
Right.
He's not disabled.
Right.
And then, so we deny it. We've
Right.
still got a workers' compensation
He goes back
case
to
that's
workers'
out,
comp.
so then he goes, back to workers' comp, or files an action against the plan
Right.
saying, give me the benefits, because I've got a workers' comp decision saying it is, and we've got an IME, and then we're litigating it. And I'm just not sure that that's the best use of plan assets when the township has determined, and the officer have both said, look, he's
Yeah,
disabled.
and I mean, this is a separate issue, but related, which is we talked like a year ago, that the plan gives you the right to periodically send everyone who's on disability back to a new IME, right? Like this, in another year or two, maybe a candidate for that.
That's true. If there's a concern about, that there could be a recovery. And that is, the standard is unable to
first.
perform police functions,
Police-
not any, because I know that
Correct.
he is able to work but not in a
Yes,
police
so
capacity.
the township doctor said that he was able to work at an office job, but not able to work excuse me,
His doctor,
his doctor
Yes.
said that he could work in an office job, he couldn't work at it.
as a police officer, right?
The township doctor said he was fully recovered.
So do you agree with Shannon?
I do.
We're paying you big bucks for, I guess.
I do. I mean, I do think if you'd wind up in litigation.
Right. And I just
I'm
don't
not
think
afraid of
it's,
litigation as
I know.
long as we win it.
right, I just
Well,
think it may not be the best.
So if you send him to a
use
third
plan-
doctor,
Plan assets.
the plan is pretty clear on that point, right? Like if you send him to a third doctor and the third doctor says he's not disabled, I think you'll win that. Because the plan is very clear that whatever the decision of the independent doctor is the conclusive decision.
But they don't want to do it.
Right, which means, and I think, right, do you agree with Mr. Miller that if the plan is directing the third IME, the plan's paying for it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the question is.
But that's the case if the township agreed or not.
Yeah,
Right,
right.
like in every case, the third
Be-
IME would.
Because it's being paid, because
be
it's being
paid for by the
directed by
plan.
the plan.
Yeah,
What do you guys think?
Well, I know what he's thinking.
Yes.
He don't like it. And I don't like a lot of what's going on, but we have to act as good stewards and the best we can to save plan assets. I'll say this on the record. Trustee Thompson and myself have sought these positions not to hurt any member of we are members of Lodge 27 FOP as much as any of these applicants, but the police department in this town has a platoon full, enough to fill an entire platoon of injured on duty status officers. And I'll say on the record, not all of them are legitimately injured. I think some of them are committing fraud. Protect myself from this plan from liability. I'm not going to identify which ones, but it is what it is. And Trustee Thompson and myself, I don't want to speak for Tom, are trying to stop the hemorrhaging of personnel that's going on. The town and the plan can only afford so much. I mean, you heard from our advisors how behind we are financially. With that being said, we'll take your.
I'd like to add my 2 cents into that, Tom.
Yes, John, please.
And only, yeah, and echo what you said. The arguments that are made here are exactly why I'm not an attorney. I have agreed with very few attorneys over the years, and with due respect, I respect your opinion, and I'm sure it is absolutely 100%. But holy mackerel, Andy, this hurts to move this forward. The only thing I say is ask is that in 2 years from now, I may or may not be here, but if you have an opportunity, you should revisit this.
You know, I will say, I mean, I think if you guys feel strongly that we want to do another medical exam, I'm not going to oppose it. I'm not sure that, you know, I don't know that it's going to give us a different place, but if you feel strongly that you will, you know, you feel better as stewards of the plan, if we get a third medical opinion, then I'm not going to oppose it.
Well, I appreciate that. I just feel after you guys discussing it that it won't further our cause or be in the best
my
interest of
concern.
our assets.
Yeah.
Tom, do you have anything? No. No way, one or the other. All right.
He's remaining silent so as not to incriminate himself, I believe, is the,
All right. I guess we'll entertain a motion. Effective,
yeah, that is a question. What would, because he's still currently.
He's still employed.
So it would be,
I
it would
assume-
just be going forward.
I assume it would be whenever he retires, right?
I'm sorry.
I think it would just be going forward.
if we move forward on Officer Givens' application, when should that be effective for service-connected disability retirement?
Date we approve it.
You can come up, Mike.
My officers will do whatever I tell
Okay?
All right.
And if it will help to move this along, I'll agree, not to go retroactive on Officer Gibbons' service connected, but to make it effective as of whatever date you approve it.
Yeah.
Mr. Fitzgerald, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be right because he's
Allison,
still
you're all right with
currently
that?
receiving benefits.
Okay.
Right, because he's still been receiving workers' comp.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be May 1, I assume. That's right, first, or is it April 30th? For termination. Or would it just be today?
I don't know, Dave, does it make Would you want it to be,
If it was effective today, the first payment would be May.
That's fine.
okay,
Yeah, May 1.
Okay. A motion to retire Officer Michael Givens, service-connected, effective May 1. Motion.
I move.
All those in favor of the motion that's been seconded, say aye.
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 John Farmer is aye. John Rooney is aye. Thomas Thompson.
Opposed?
Thomas Thompson's opposed. Jeffrey Doherty is aye. 3 ayes, 1 opposed. The motion passes. Officer Givens is retired effective May 1.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your courtesy. Thank you. Rob, thank you. Thank you, Al.
Is there any other?
So I will get the benefit statements ASAP from the secretary and distribute those. Anything else, Rob?
Nothing.
Okay.
Other than if you want to talk about revisiting disabled folks. Which the plan gives you the right to send anyone on disability periodically to for a medical exam. So unless you want to revisit that.
Well, we had, like, over 2 years ago, someone give us cause for that, but they
But
wisened
that-
up and
That resolved itself.
resolved
Yes.
itself. So
Right.
short of that, I don't have one at the moment, but we could-
Unless, right, we have a reason.
unless we have,
Unless you have a reason. Yeah, the
Right.
plan gives you the right periodically. It doesn't mean you have to.
you don't have to have a reason. You can just
Correct.
periodically.
You
pick
can just
and
say
send.
every couple of years, we're doing you.
Okay.
Yeah. So you don't have to do that, but that is an option under the plan.
And what happens if our physician says, yes, they're good to go back to police duty?
That's, to me, that's a CBA question.
Oh, okay.
They would no
From a-
longer be eligible for
They
the
would no longer
disability
receive
benefits.
disability pension benefits.
Okay. Would you want to weigh in on that? Just so, can you come here for the record?
The plan with all due respect to Rob, the plan document gives the township the option periodically, if there is reasonable evidence, something
Okay.
that comes to them that says that a officer on disability pension, service-connected or non-service-connected, appears to have been recovered or is engaging in activities which would be inconsistent with the determination.
I don't think that's correct. So I'm reading from the plan document. It says the trustees, so not the township, the trustees may require any member who is receiving a disability annuity to undergo a medical examination, but not more frequently than once each 6 months. If the trustees determine that the member is no longer disabled, payments of the disability annuity shall cease, but the member shall have the option to vest his or her superannuity benefit if he or she meets the requirements for vesting, and that cites a section.
I agree with Rob. What I was suggesting is that the issue comes to the pension trustees from the township, because whoever gets that information brings it under that section. that
No,
Rob-
again, it's not based on any information. She says the trustees may require the member do it. Right, so I read it as the trustees on its own could do it every 6 months.
Okay.
Okay.
So, just like we had somebody out on disability, they left, and then they tried to get another law enforcement job. We should have sent him back.
Oh, we were going to.
Right.
Right.
And for the record, I did not represent that officer.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the plan
We discussed it.
says.
Huh?
Yeah.
We discussed it.
Yes, we did.
The plan, I mean, if you got information that someone was going to have something happen that they weren't disabled, you could obviously send them back.
Okay.
The plan doesn't contemplate outside information. It just says you may require someone no more than once every 6 months.
Right, so it could just be routine if
Yes.
we wanted to spend the money to do that.
If you wanted to spend the money to do it, you could routinely do it.
Right.
Now, I think every 6 months is fast, right? I wouldn't do it every
Right.
6 months. But the plan says no more frequently than 6 months.
Maybe a topic for discussion at our next meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Any other business while we're on the record? No?
Do we
All right.
have our next meeting scheduled?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll
thank you.
find it for you.
No, it's fine. I'm sure it's on my calendar. I just couldn't remember. There's too many things on my calendar.
All right. Okay, motion to adjourn the meeting.